Yes, hello, welcome everybody, it's Chris here from the Ministry of Dice, and I'm back again today with another one of my video presentation thingamadoodads, and today we have the fourth instalment of my Dice Masters Affiliation series. What's that, Chris, you ask? Well, if you're new around these parts, or you just need a quick reminder, the Dice Masters Affiliation video series I'm working on is where I'm gradually sharing my thoughts on my favourite affiliations in the game of Dice Masters. I've said it before and I've said it again, I love playing Single Affiliation Dice Masters. I think it's a really fun, really great way of enjoying the game with a casual approach. I love the themey nature of it. I love the way that some of the cards in the affiliations synergize with each other and have these kind of janky combos that are unique just to that affiliation. And being a big comic book nerd and a big superhero movie nerd, I like getting my favourite teams together and duking it out just to see who the top team is. All these on the screen right now are the affiliations that I'm working my way through. Some of them I have already recorded, so I'd encourage you to take a look at the playlist on our channel that includes these. But today's video, in particular, I'm going to focus on the Spider Friends affiliation. Spider-Man and his buddies. And I'm going to take a look at the card pool. I'm going to talk a little bit about what sets include cards with the Spider Friends affiliation on them. And then a few loose categories to talk about kind of team building card types that you'd be thinking about when putting your team together. And my faves in that particular category. I'm not going to go and review every single card with the affiliation, just some top picks. I'll also remind folks, or just state that this is at time of recording, so there may be new cards that subsequently come out that are attached to this affiliation that may change the landscape here, but at time of recording, these are my faves and these are the facts. So let's get into it then. Let's start with the card pool. And according to the Dice Coalition Team Builder, right now we have 104 cards that carry the Spider Friends affiliation. Now, that's not the smallest by any stretch of the imagination, but it's certainly not the largest affiliation either. It's kind of sitting in the middle, but it's a pretty healthy card pool for building a team out of. It gives you a lot of choice and a lot of selections to fill certain functions within your team, which is really, really exciting. And they're spread out across a couple of sets, but not too many sets. If you're looking to collect Spider Friends cards, then you're only really looking at focusing on 5 sets in particular. You have the Amazing Spider-Man, obviously, Deadpool, the Guardians of the Galaxy, the Mighty Thor, and the Maximum Carnage team pack. So a smaller selection of sets that, as a collector, if you're looking to try and get your hands on Spider Friends cards, it's a bit less of a journey to try and gather up the good ones, And I'm pretty sure you can find Amazing Spider-Man and Deadpool and perhaps even some Mighty Thor draft packs out and about relatively cheap. You may struggle to find Maximum Carnage, though. Possibly. I've not checked, but I think it might be a tough one to lay your hands on. So it's got a healthy card pool, or a reasonably healthy card pool, and it's from a small selection of sets. So, in terms of the wallet, if you want to try and get your hands on some of these, it's not going to be quite as challenging as, say, getting your hands on loads of good Avengers or good X-Men, for example. So that's the lay of the land in terms of what we've got. Deadpool as a set I think there was only 2 or 3, maybe not even that. So it's a very small selection in that set, but certainly the Amazing Spider-Man and the Maximum Carnage team pack will see a lot of cards from that space there as I go through the categories. So let's talk about a few cards now then, and I'm going to start with win conditions. If you're going to build a team around the Spider Friends affiliation, any affiliation really, you need a way to win the game. And the Spider Friends affiliation kind of has a bit of a focus. It's kind of a combative focus, really, and some of that combative focus speaks to the theme of Spider-Man and his buddies, the sort of swinging around through the buildings, the spider-enhanced strength, that kind of stuff. That seems to be the sort of focus of the way that a Spider Friends team would win. In terms of that spider strength, you've got cards like Spider-Man Tangled Web. He's no slouch when it comes to stats across any of the sets. This is just one I've chosen to demonstrate kind of the building up of that attack strength. When Spider-Man attacks, he gets +2 attack until the end of turn. If he's on level 1, the Burst Face, he gives all the Spider Friends affiliated characters +2 attack while they're attacking, which is a nice synergy, just specifically for a Spider Friends team. And he's got a global that makes Spider Friends, although if you're playing an affiliated team, you wouldn't need that. Just building up the stats, buffing up the stats. It's all about kind of getting a band of Spider-Man and all his friends and supporters together, and he is inspiring them and buffing up their stats to make a more aggressive attack. Although the attack stats themselves aren't the way to win necessarily, because you need to get that damage through. There's certainly a focus around that unblockable or overcrush that's reflecting those two elements of the character, the kind of swinging around, or the fact that they've got this kind of enhanced strength, spider strength, So you've got things like Spider-Man Sneaky Pete. He's a underdog. That's when you've got less characters in the field than your opponent. And when he's attacking alone, he's unblockable, and he's got slightly better stats there. He's got the 4/4 and 5/5 on level 2 and level 3. You've got cards like Silver Sable from the Amazing Spider-Man set. You can sacrifice her in your main step to make a character die unblockable. You've got Spider-Man War of the Heart. This is an interesting one. While Spider-Man is attacking, your opponent must declare at least one blocker for each of your attacking sidekick character dice before assigning blockers to your non-sidekick character dice. When Spider-Man attacks, prevent all damage dealt to your sidekick characters. So this is a really interesting one. We saw this used a lot, actually, for a period of time. The idea being that you build up a bit of a wall of sidekicks in addition to your sort of more beefier killer characters, attack with them all, and your opponent is forced into that blocking decision. They've got to block the sidekicks, so your bigger stuff goes through. So you find a way to keep yourself in, a gross number of sidekicks that are equal to or greater than the number of characters your opponent's got, so your other stuff goes through undefended. And that nice little touch where your sidekicks don't die, so they sit in the field, they're ready and able to give you some blocking power in your opponent's turns. That's a really interesting one to build a team around in terms of Spider Friends affiliation, although just an interesting one to build a team around in general. You've got Madam Web, very well-known unblockable creator here. When Madam Web attacks, you may pay 2. If you do, all opposing character dice must block Madam Web this turn, so she draws them all into her web, so all your other stuff goes through. And when you've got Spider-Mans floating around with 4/5 attack, that soon becomes a very damaging prospect, that all your characters have got to block Madam Web, and these 5-attack Spider-Men are just going through and wreaking havoc on your opponent. Or you've got stuff like MJ, Mary Jane. When fielded, target non-villain character you control gains Overcrush this turn. If you targeted Spider-Man, he also gets +1. So I like that, just that little extra note there that's a bit of in-affiliation synergy. So you may not want to make all your characters unblockable, but you might want to use Mary Jane to make them Overcrushers. And then finally, I did want to throw this one in. I tried making a team out of this. It's a bit of a rough one, really. But Firestar here is a direct damage character in the Spider Friends affiliation. When Firestar takes damage, deal 1 damage to target character or player. So she's a little bit of a kind of pseudo Nova or a pseudo Iceman. She's a little bit more expensive than Iceman, a 5-cost bolt. But there's a lot of opportunity, especially because she's not restricted to the attack step, unlike Iceman and Nova were, to perhaps spam a bit of ping damage on her to fire some more damage across the field or over to your opponent. So just one that I think we don't look at very often, perhaps because of the 5 cost and because Iceman's a little bit cheaper. But there's an opportunity, if your affiliations aren't restricted in the team building single affiliation format that you've chosen, for example, then you could maybe chuck a magic missile or a unstable canister with the ping global on it, and then in your main step just hit her for 3 on her level 2 or 3, so she survives, obviously, and fire 3 damage across the field at your opponent. And if you've got several of them out in the field, or you've got a way of buffing up her defense, could be a nice way to go. So mostly combat centric, mostly focused on them swinging around on their web ropes. I don't know if that's the right turn of phrase. Swinging around, enhanced spider strength, overcrushing, capturing people in nets so you can walk through, undefended, all this kind of stuff is generally the focus of the Spider Friends affiliation, and Spider-Man himself is the central character there, is no slouch in terms of stats, no slouch in terms of his game text. So there's your win condition ideas. There are a few more bits and bobs like Miguel O'Hara and stuff, but those are the ones that I played around with in the past, really enjoyed using, really enjoyed making Spider Friends centric teams out of. Let's now talk a little bit about ramp, because this is perhaps the weakness of the Spider Friends affiliation. There is very little, in fact, it's almost non-existent. There's a Gwen Stacy, I think, that helps you out with fielding costs, but she's expensive in her own right in terms of fielding costs. So when it comes to ramp, your Spider Friends affiliation is going to have to rely very heavily on basic action ramp. There's not a lot of options in the card pool to support the team in terms of your spending power. And one thing I've observed in the past when playing Spider Friends affiliation Affiliation is that the fielding costs of the characters can be particularly painful. Lots of them on their level 3 have a 2 fielding cost. So you want to be looking at your superhero registration acts, your investigations, you want to be looking at your whoever assembles, your gearing ups, your power almighties, your basic action cards that are going to help you, throwing bricks, your basic action cards that are going to help you ramp up to be able to afford not only the purchase cost of the dice, but also to help you manage the high fielding costs that are across a lot of the characters in the Spider Friends Affiliation. And also to support, like if you're looking to use Madam Web, her game text, too generic, it seems all right on the surface, but when you're trying to buy characters, field characters, keep some energy back for some globals that you might want to use, and then pay 2 to make your characters unblockable and force your opponent to block her, it all starts to add up. And they don't have a great deal of support in the card pool itself. So when it comes to ramp, the Spider Friends Affiliation falls down on this front, and you're going to be relying really heavily on either trying to keep your team lean, play it lean and just do it with a small selection of characters, which I don't think it's an affiliation built to do, or you're relying on basic actions to get your ramp in play. So there you go, ramp. Not a great deal of choices in that area. Let's now take a look at some of the more kind of control and utility elements of a Spider Friends team, and they've got some great removal to begin with. Let's have a look at this guy, Iron Spider, too cool for words. When fielded, deal 2 damage to target character die for each different active, the Iron Man stuff, or Spider Friends character die you control. So in a Spider Friends specific team where you're going to have lots of Spider Friends characters out in the field, this guy has an incredible capacity to remove even some of the biggest, kind of beefiest stuff that your opponent's going to be putting out in the field on the opposite side. If you've got, say, 2 or 3 Spider Friends affiliated characters in the field, and then you field this guy, you're doing 6 or 8 damage. That's a big capacity to remove some stuff that could be really threatening on the other side of the table. Although, as a when fielded character, he is quite expensive with those fielding costs. He's an example of the fielding cost problem that I was talking about before. There is also another little bit of cheeky removal in the Spider Friends Affiliation. You've got Iron Fist. This is Rolling Thunder Cannon Punch. Bow now 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 now. While Iron Fist is active, once during your turn, you may pay X Fist Energy to deal X damage to target opposing character die. So again, it's got the capacity to really remove some larger defense stuff, although it will be expensive to do so. There are a lot of Fist Energy characters in the Spider Friends Affiliation, so generating the Fist is not necessarily that much of a problem, but still, in a ramp-starved affiliation, it could be a problem you encounter. He's a little bit cheaper than Iron Spider at a 3 cost, but he's also restricted to once during your turn, so the fact that you can only do it one time is a little bit restricting as well, but it's certainly some cheeky removal. If you've got both of these guys, Iron Spider and Iron Fist, you've got the capacity to potentially remove 2 characters a turn, which I think could be useful. Although, again, look at that fielding cost on his level 3. Expensive fielding costs in this affiliation. There's also some disincentive control available for the Spider Friends. You've got cards like this, Spider-Man Photo Op. While Spider-Man is active, opposing when fielded abilities cannot be used unless your opponent pays 1 life, or if he's on burst face, they have to pay 2 life. So that's a nice bit of extra control in there. If you're facing a meta with lots of when fielded stuff going on, and you want to put that to bed, stop that from happening, or certainly disincentivize your opponent from doing that, or make them pay a price for it, then this is a pretty decent card. It's quite expensive at a 5 cost. Got those heavier fielding costs in there as well. It doesn't entirely prevent it, so early game, your opponent may decide that taking 1 or 2 life to commit to a when fielded action is not too much to pay, although with it being life loss and not damage, it's obviously harder for them to mitigate as well. So it's nice. I think the thing is as well, because this is on a Spider-Man card, and you've got a lot of other very attractive Spider-Man character cards in his affiliation, then this might not be a card you want to look at using, but it's interesting nonetheless. We've also got Black Cat here. This is an interesting one. Keeping the Bloodhounds at bay. While Black Cat is active, your opponent cannot field level 3 character dice. So just a lovely bit of kind of opponent control. It doesn't really achieve a great deal other than annoying the hell out of them. I've often played against this card, and for some mythical reason, whenever I'm playing against this black cat, I always seem to roll level 3 characters. I don't know what it is. But it's just a nice little way to make sure that your opponent's characters are staying a bit smaller. They're on the smaller side. It's forcing a re-roll, which increases the chances of them whiffing the character. So it's a nice card to use. It's definitely a janky one just to chuck into a Spider Friends team to fill a slot. At a 4 cost, do you pick it up all that often? Possibly not, but she's a little bit more favourable in terms of fielding costs compared to other Spider Friends characters. And she's got some nice defence stats, so she's a good blocker too. So just an interesting bit of jank in there. And finally, SPDR, Arachnid CPU. A lot of text on this guy, but while SPDR is active, when an opposing non-SPDR ability deals damage to you, deal that same amount of damage to target opponent. While SPDR is active, when you are dealt damage, cancel any active effects of previously used action die. So a bit of a mouthful, a lot going on there, but the bottom line is I generally use it as, a disincentive to direct damage strategies. That my SPDR in the field is going to deliver back to my opponent any damage that they've dealt to me. So it just keeps you on a level playing field. It doesn't stop the damage, but it certainly keeps the pace of life loss equal, and that whole kind of cancelling previously used action effects can be useful as well. He again, though, is another example. Look at that fielding cost at level 3 is another example of the higher end edge of fielding costs that exist in the Spider Friends affiliation that you need to be aware of if playing with a team based around these guys. So there's SPDR. Okay then, folks, well, that now brings me to the end of my Spider Friends affiliation review. I hope you enjoyed my little walkthrough of some of my top picks from the Spider Friends affiliation. There's many more cards beside, so please do let me know in the comments below if there's a Spider Friends card that I've not talked about in this video today that you're a big fan of, and how you brew around that, or what you do with it, or what the combos are. I'd really love to hear from you. I'm not entirely sure where I'm going to go next. I kind of like to go with my vibe, my gut instinct, what I'm feeling like covering at any given time. But the next installment, part 5, will be on one of the other affiliations left on my list to tick off. But in the meantime, I've been Chris. We're the Ministry of Dice, and I'll see you on a podcast, on a video, or over at BritRoller6.com sometime soon. Thanks for watching, folks.